When it comes to running a business, I've said it numerous times in different containers and in different live streams, but your higher self is the one that needs to see you as employable. Your higher self is the one that needs to be trusting in you that you are going to guide and lead the way on the earthly plane. And part of where that trust comes in is in how much you're already doing that. The more that you are in the 3D world being reverent and responsible, the more that your higher self is going to give you because you can actually hold it. You can do more than someone who is unwilling to be responsible and reverent in their life. See, whether you're in bank and you're just focusing on your personal and financial intimacy right now, or if you're beginning your journey in Minted, or if you're just on the edge between the two, you have to remember it comes back to those two things. Being reverent and being responsible are the cornerstones of a successful business. And I say that because I have worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs at this point. And the only differentiating factor between a successful entrepreneur and someone who looks successful are those two things. This isn't to shame you if you haven't been showing up responsible. It isn't to get you upset or resistant. It's saying that your higher self will only give you as much as you have been willing to hold in this world. Meaning, if you are working a day job and all of a sudden you realize, shit, my day job does not pay me enough. I need to create my own business. I need to create something in this world. That's when your higher self starts to perk up because you are no longer just a cog in a machine it never wanted you to be a part of, but you're actually willing to be open and receptive to the journey you need to go on for your life to actually work. So immediately you turn towards this desire of, oh, I actually want to create something for myself. How do I do that? Well, if I'm going to have a deep embodied sense of respect for the truth of my life and everything in it, well, I know that I can't really build a business that is designed to fail. But here's what the average person does. They have this desire to create a business because they have a vision of their future. They have this idea of who they'll become if they create this business rather than actually just show up to the business and see what happens. Immediately, your vision is the thing carrying you forward. No, don't get me wrong. If we look at the startup world, if we look at business in general, there is this emphasis on visionaries. You need to have the vision. The vision carries you forward. Well, I actually would argue that it doesn't. That the most fundamentally, financially risky investments happen with a visionary CEO. Someone who lives entirely in their head about the idea of who they'll be if this business is successful, of the impact this business will be giving the world. It's all a vision. In my space, that is literally no different mental fluff. Because if that vision cannot be embodied in this world, your higher self is going to basically call you crazy. Because you're not showing up as the kind of person to create that thing. Because if you were, it wouldn't be a vision. It would be a reality. The one thing that you'll see through all bodies of work with me is that it's all about the reverence of right now, the real thing that is right in front of you. Because the truth is that the visions you might have for yourself are probably not even the thing you're going to have. Because the visions I have for myself are actually quite humble and small. They're quite contained. Let me tell you something. My higher self has a much bigger vision for me. And so the more that I tend to the real reality in front of me, the more opening there is for my higher self to give me more responsibility, to give me more things to revere, more money, more clients, more life, more accountabilities, all of these things. And so your vision for yourself may not even be real. The vision you have for yourself is likely more attached to your ego and your woundings than it is to truth. So here's the invitation is to put the vision down just for a moment, not forever, but just for a moment, and ask yourself, well, what's the next thing? If I was truly going to have reverence and responsibility for my life, what is the next thing? If you design your life this way, there will never be a time when your life isn't taken care of. And there will never be a time where that vision doesn't slowly begin to become a reality. It stops being a vision because it actually is being manifested right now. To give you some more grounded examples, in 2016, I was working for a startup and we had one of those visionary entrepreneur. But this was also the most difficult man to work with because his vision was so disconnected from his present embodiment. His vision was the thing he was following, but he had no density in current reality to make that vision real. So what happened? Well, every quarter we'd have a strategy session about how to make this vision come alive. And guess what would happen in the quarter? Goddamn nothing. We had all these ideas that if we were to impact 1 million people, that if we did, 500,000 people a quarter, that we would do that easily. Well, how would we get it? Like, we did the whole strategy of everything. And let me tell you, strategy can become a place where you energetically dump, where you sit in a meeting and you whiteboard everything, but you don't actually follow through on any of it. And so I remember sitting in these meetings and being like, I'm going to be open, right? The first quarter, like, I'm totally open to this being a reality. And I was so excited and I was ready to back it. And then day-to-day business happened, and day-to-day business was totally disassociated. And that's when I realized that the business itself, if we were to look at it like a person, didn't embody the vision. The vision became the ego of the business. We're going to impact 1 million people. Are you? Because I don't see that actually being manifested in the present embodiment of what is happening inside this business. We're going to be able to be profitable in 3 years. Okay, cool. But like, it's now been 4 years and we're going to be cashed out in 6 months, and you have not acknowledged this. There came a point when I was working at this startup that I became jaded and I became resentful because I could see where our resources were misallocated. We were spending tens of thousands of dollars on marketing and not just like advertising, but I'm talking about spending tens of thousands of dollars of sending our C-level staff to all of these marketing events. Like, we were sending them to TED and we were sending them to Southwest by Southwest. Like, we were sending them all over the place. And I was like, I don't see the financial return on this. And the reason why I didn't see the financial return on it was because I was in the books. I was the one doing the financial record keeping, but also the financial projections. And so there was an intimacy that I had with the reality of the business that the C-level executives were totally disconnected from. And it didn't matter how I presented the information. It didn't matter how much I was like being like, hey, can we take a look at this? It didn't matter how much they said that they looked at the documents. There was a complete disconnect between C-suite and the actual happenings of the business. And so there was one point where it's hard not to be upset about it. We were struggling to meet payroll. We were struggling to make our bills every single month. And I couldn't get a word in edgewise when it came to looking at the financial information because the vision was the thing we kept focusing on. But I was like, but the embodiment of the company is missing. If the vision is to break even every month and be profitable later on, you need to acknowledge that we're not bringing money in every month to make that happen. Completely unwilling. A lack of reverence, a lack of deep embodied respect for the truth that we were not breaking even, that we were not having cash flows we required for this business, that while we were getting investors, we couldn't actually prove that the model was sustainable because the model itself was breaking apart. This morning, I was sitting here reflecting on it, like, why was this one so upsetting for me? Because after I worked at that startup, I continued to work on like hundreds of books thereafter. And I was like, well, what's the issue here? And the more that I sat with it, the more that I realized the issue for me was the unwillingness to receive the reality. See, the way that the business was designed is that when we would make a sale, it would be $100,000 sale. And that's great. But there was a disconnect between the sale and the cash flow. And the truth is there's always a disconnect between those two things if you're unwilling to acknowledge it. See, what I mean by that is we made the sale of $100,000, but that didn't mean the client paid $100,000 to our bank account that month. In fact, the way that the model ran with these clients, because the sales team was just trying to get the sale, they didn't care about the structure. They didn't care about the financial flow of things of like, what do we need to bring in every month? They just cared about, we need to make these sales. So who cares about the terms? And you end up making these really janky contracts because you just care about the sale, because the sale is the vanity metric. If you've done $1 million in sales, oh, that's sexy. But if you have $1 million in sales and $1 million that is not collectible for a year, you have a problem. See, with this particular company, the way that they had structured their contracts was you'd make the sale. Okay. So say $100,000. Well, these clients would only allow you to invoice them by miles. So for ease of explanation, what I'm going to say here is, let's say every quarter we did a quarter of the work, right? So every 3 months we could invoice them for $25,000. So we make the sale of $100,000, $0 is collected. In 3 months, we can collect $25,000. So cash zero, month one, cash zero, month two, cash zero, month three, end of month three, we can invoice. Oh, you think, oh, well, Steph, but that you get $25,000 in 3 months. No. Because this client also had net 120 terms. And if you're unfamiliar with the language, what that basically means is when you get the invoice, you have 120 days to pay the invoice. So this particular client, and this is standard with government, this is standard with large private industry, and who was primarily our customers at the time. And so we make the sale of $100,000, month one, $0 collected, month two, $0 collected, month three, $0 collected. collected. Invoice for $25,000, $0 collected. Month 5, $0 collected. Month 6, $25,000 collected. The math is not mathing. If you make a sale of $100,000, but you don't only make $25,000 cash in 6 months, yet you have payroll from month 1 to month 6, the model is fundamentally broken. The model immediately proves how unsustainable the business is. But the only way to know that is if you are intimate about the way money moves in and out of your account. See, everyone wants to pay attention to sales. That means you don't have financial intimacy because sales kind of mean nothing. It means nothing if it's not collected. And so, like, sure, you might have a contract and you can go after the client, but like, client doesn't pay because services weren't rendered. You know, it gets really messy. And so I remember sitting down and like crying because every single month we were having to get like a cash injection to cover payroll. And cash injections are not a business practice that I would ever recommend. But basically, it's like emergency money. Like, we're not making enough money. We need emergency. And we were in this spot of like, that was the solution. That was the response. It was a reaction to the reality we were facing, which in essence is responsible because people need to be paid, but it's not sustainable because you can't do that over and over and over again. And so it came to this point where I found myself really frustrated, and I went to my COO and I was like, listen, I feel like I'm being blamed for the fact that we're not making payroll, but like, there's literally nothing I can personally do to make sure this happens. And I'm going to explain why. And I sat down with her and I brought, examples, and I was like, here's all the contract. We make this sale, but it's not invoiceable for 3 months, and it's not payable. Like, really, we give them 3 months thereafter to pay. And let me tell you, this particular client never paid on time anyways. So I was like, so we make $100,000 sale, but we can only get 25,000 of it maybe in 6 months. And so when I'm doing a cash flow projection of like, well, can we cover our bills? The answer is no, not unless we're making up like a tremendous amount of money. And there's a tremendous amount of money to last 6 months from now. Meaning, if our operating costs are, let's say, $100,000. We're just doing easy numbers here. If our operating costs, so every month I have to spend $100,000, and I know these sound like crazy numbers, and I'm going to break it down for like the solo entrepreneur in a moment. But if we have $100,000 operating expenses, and you only do $100,000 that month in sales, and 25,000 of that is only collectible within 6 months. By the time you get your first deposit, you've already incurred $600,000 worth of operating expenses that you could not cover. Where's that money coming from? Oh, but Steph, we made that sale back 6 months ago. So that money's it's repaying that debt. No, it's not, because we're still incurring $100,000 in operating expenses every single month. See, this is where inside the piggy bank, I teach about how debt is living. So are your operating expenses. If you are not bringing in enough money to cover your operating expenses every single month, you are incurring a living number. So the idea is that eventually it's got to balance out. You've got to be making the kind of money in the future where that debt you incurred is worth it. But we never changed the model. We never shifted how we were bringing in money. We never shifted it so we could have money coming in right away. There was always a 6-month lag time, which meant we would have had to be doing like 6 times the amount of, well, even more than that, actually, the amount of sales. We needed to be bringing in more money. The model could not be proved. And to be 100% honest, when I finally left the company had been around for 7 years and it still wasn't profitable. And there comes a point where the business itself is just a vanity corporation, which basically means that the business is just about serving your ego, because it's not actually doing what business is supposed to be doing. It's not actually meeting the vision. Because if your vision is that you have a business that isn't profitable, you don't have a business, you have an expensive hobby. And so my idea of reverent and responsible financial intimacy via your business requires that you show up to see the reality of it and design your business where meeting that reality isn't hard. Now, when you're a solo entrepreneur, you're not dealing with $100,000 in operating expenses. For myself personally, operating my business is only $4,000 a month. And then my life requires $5,000. So I need to be bringing in $9,000 a month without fail. Now, that's not even including all the extra things that I might like going out for dinner or whatever. But like just in essentials, my business needs to be bringing in a minimum of $9,000, actually more, because I have to pay taxes on that anyway. So let's say $11,000 just to be fun, right? $11,000 every single month. Now, how do I design my business to bring in $11,000 just to function, right? Now, I'm never going to recommend that you start a business where you have to make $10,000 or $11,000 this month because it's just unreasonable. But you have to have a model where that is possible, that your life can be sustained, that your business can be sustained by the model itself. And then the model can scale if it's true to, but not because you feel like I have to make more money. You scale it because it's, oh, you know what? I would really love to have more impact. I would really love to bring on a team member, not because you need it, not because you crave it, but because it's true to. And what I mean by that is like, so for example, I work 20 hours client facing a month. So for me to scale, I just still bring in more business. I won't hire someone new until I have enough business to pay them a really great salary because that's just my value system. But people have a tendency of like, well, I'm just going to hire more people. And then hiring more people is going to bring me over business. It's like, yeah, not if your model's fucked. Hiring more people is actually going to be a detriment to your business. And this is what happens in startup culture. You rapidly hire, you rapidly fire. Because you think that hiring more people is going to bring you more business, but it's actually the flow of the financial information. It is the rate of return on like, do you have money coming in, the money you have coming in and the money going out. And this is what makes financial operations so tricky. Because if you have a service-based company, it's quite easy to calculate. But if you have a product-based company, it can be a little bit harder because you're like, well, wait, I can't expand because I don't have the money coming in to expand. It's like, well, okay, well, then we need to design something where you could have money coming in that serves expansion. And I'll tell you, that's what I've done my entire business. My entire business is like, here's the foundation because this is what I need to serve. And then everything else is about my own expansion. Of course, still of service, but it's like, I need to expand in this way. So I'm going to serve this thing and I want to serve it wholeheartedly. And then it's like, boom, I got the money for it. Cool. The reason why I always come back to reverence and responsibility is because it can be so easy to sacrifice your time and your energy in attempt to earn money. It can be so easy to sacrifice money under the presumption that it's going to give you more time. But if you lack reverence, all you're doing is like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Reverence is this experience of knowing that every action you do is a reflection of your self-respect. And if you respect yourself, you respect others. You respect yourself, you respect the earth. You respect yourself. There is no exploitation. There is no entitlement. It's actually quite humble and honest and transparent. And so in something like Minted, which is the journey of entrepreneurial financial intimacy, what makes this journey so fucking different is that I'm not interested in having a deprived life because the energetic quality of being like, oh, but Steph, the reality of my business is that it doesn't work. It's like, well, exactly. So we need to create it so it does. I want you to have that juicy life and I want you to have it feel in flow. Even when money is tight, I want you to feel expanded. Even when things are like not quite there, I still want you to feel secure. See, that's the difference between deprivation and decadence. Decadence is not extravagance. Decadence is saying this thing specifically, this dark chocolate ganache is going to make this entire dessert rich. See, I'm not talking about extravagant wealth. I'm talking about the decadent wealth, where everything feels like a deliberate bite of something delightful, that everything you do is masterful and architecturally designed, specific to your life, to your service, to what you require and what you're willing to show up for. Because here's the thing, if you design a business that is based in a vision and not based in responding to the reality you're in, your higher self will never give you the vision. It will simply wait around until you're actually willing to be the person who gets that vision in real life. Are you willing to show up as the person who is reverent and responsible now and wherever you are, so that maybe that vision, if it's true, can manifest? And the vision your higher self actually desires for you definitely will. And I say this because I'm really clear that I have not been wanting to show up for the vision my higher self has for me because it's a little scary to me. But guess what? The more that I'm showing up in reverence and responsibility, the more my higher self is like, you ready yet? You ready yet? Look, you're showing up for it. You're going to be the kind of person who does this. And I'm like, oh shit, I've accidentally learned the skills. I've accidentally learned how to show up like the person I'll inevitably be because my higher self sees me as capable. My higher self sees me as responsible. My higher self sees me as someone who is deeply reverent of that mission, not the vision that my ego has, not the ideal vanity business, but like truly the mission that I'm here to be on. That isn't chosen by me. That's chosen by something much bigger. And so if I show up every day reverent and responsible for my personal resources, for my business resources, the inevitable is that my higher self sees me as more capable. And so when I show up to my business, by default of way of being, my actual embodiment means that my business starts to grow in a way that is incomprehensible to the external eye who thinks that scaling my business is more important than the truth of it. So Minted itself is the entrepreneurial journey of financial intimacy. It is a combination of everything that's taught in bank, but also the upper level teachings for those who are actually creating their life, who are showing up and saying, you know what? I hear my higher self and I want to show up as someone that my higher self can see is capable of fulfilling it. That's what I desire for myself. And I may not see it clearly. I may not understand it fully, but I have the faith that if I show up every day, that is the inevitable future. And that future is far better than anything I could imagine for myself. It is far better than the vision my ego has about who I could possibly be. It is just the upper level coaching of what I teach in bank. Because what do we do in bank? We look at our financial intimacy. Are you willing to respond to the reality you're in? Are you willing to respect yourself enough to ensure that your responses are not extractive, exploitive, that they're not entitled, right? Are you willing to respond to the reality you're in with reverence? Because if you are, I'm sorry, but the default is that you get this life. You get this life that you've been dreaming of because you've shown up as the person who could have it. Now, here's the thing. The difference between the vision of your higher self and the present reality of which you live are only those two things, your practice of reverence and your practice of responsibility. I'm telling you, that is the only distance between the two, because it will be impossible if you show up in those two deep, profound practices that you won't be given the opportunity to design your life in service to the mission, of course, but it would be impossible, right? Like take, for example, the very first financial intimacy container or financial intimacy assignment inside of the piggy bank, the introduction to bank. What is the cost of being you? It's the very first assignment. And then you find out that you're an expensive bitch and your life actually requires $10,000 period point blank. That's not even you designing a business and the cost of operating a business. That's just your life. Shit. Once you see that, it's impossible not to receive that. And once you fully receive that, it's impossible not to respond to it. Shit, I need a better source of income. Now, you may not have the solution to that yet, but you know it. You've already received your reality with such clarity that denying it would be delusional. You receive it. Now you're like, okay, well, now let me open to like, well, what's the next thing? Otherwise, what would have happened had you not done that first initial financial intimacy assignment? Well, you would have continued living your life as if you don't cost that much. And don't get me wrong, the reverse is also true. You may find out that you don't actually cost as much as you think you do. And therefore, you don't need to hustle as hard as you think you should have. And therefore, you don't have to deny yourself the rest you actually do require. But when you do your financial intimacy assignment, you realize, oh shit, I'm not as expensive as I thought. I can actually rest. Your life changes when you receive your reality because it's impossible not to respond to it. That's all your higher self is waiting for is, are you the kind of person who's going to respond to reality enough to shift it? Right? We have these ideas in the spiritual world where it's like, oh, I'm going to jump timelines. It's like, well, one foot in front of the other. When are you going to lift your feet off the current spot? When are you going to do that? When are you actually going to jump the timeline? When are you actually going to lift up your feet and do all of the things that have you shift? When are you actually going to embody the person who does the shift, who shows up reverent, who shows up responsible to land in the new timeline? It just doesn't happen like that. It's like, oh, I just meditated. Now I'm in a new timeline. It's like, well, your embodiment hasn't caught up yet. Your embodiment is so essential because on this plane, in this world, what you do is what you create. So if you want to exploit yourself, guess what you're creating? More exploitation. If you want to be entitled, guess what you're creating? More extraction. But when you show up with reverence and responsibility, that's what you create. You create a deeper, profound, gravitational experience in your life where everything feels deliberate. It feels like it was divinely created, specific to you and whatever it is you were supposed to do in this planet. So that's why it's really hard to create a business when you don't have reverence for who you are, because you'll always have to keep readapting it. But at the end of the day, that's all your higher self is waiting for. It's saying, who are you? What do you require? Are you willing to show up as the person who can shift yourself over there? It's waiting. Your wealth will wait as long as you do. So the difference between a visionary entrepreneur and a reverent one is their willingness to embody the reality now. Not about, oh, I have this really grand idea. The difference between a visionary entrepreneur and the reverent one is how truth funnels through their body, not through their mind. It's not about our ego. It's not about our mental ideas and ideologies and concepts and the things we learn in school. It's about, well, what can I create now, in here, today? Maybe today I need to create an opportunity to nap because I can't have any other creationary force run through me. And that's fine. That works, right? It's reverence. That's where the nuance comes in. It's not always about making a sale. Sometimes it's about creating time. Sometimes it's about making more balance for love and joy in your life. That's fine. But the vision will always live in the mental world because it's actually unwilling to see what it takes in this moment because it lacks the intimacy of reality. And you cannot run a business without being intimate with the reality of how money flows in and out of your world. So enrollment is open. If you're feeling called and you're like, I just want to get on a call and I want to explore this, feel free. The door is open. I'm excited to work with entrepreneurs who are also excited to be intimate, who want that transparency. They want that honesty because they want to take the reality, receive it fully to respond to it. That's all we're doing here. Okay. And naturally, yes, we will go over things like bookkeeping and tax and all of that really fun, annoying stuff. But I just want you to sit with, whether you have a business or whether you don't, I want you to sit with, how intimate am I actually being with the resources that my business requires? How intimate am I actually being with the resources my life requires? They'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you a bajillion things if you ask me, but being under-resourced, if you receive that and you don't respond to it, that's self-punishment. That's not truth. To say I'm under-resourced and doing nothing about it is self-harm. Saying I'm under-resourced and I'm unwilling to adjust my life where I am constantly resourced doesn't work. You need to be resourced. Your business needs to be resourced because it's the only way that the mission that your higher self has for you can actually happen. So you look at the places where you're under-resourced and you take responsibility of them. Again, responsibility doesn't mean fault. It simply means your ability to respond to the reality you're in. If you're under-resourced because you didn't have enough sleep, it's time to look at how you sleep. If you're under-resourced because you're not eating enough, it's time to look at how you eat. If you're under-resourced because you're not making enough, it's time to look at how you've designed your business to ensure that continue. So those of you watching the replay, I'm going to leave you here. And I would love for you to leave a comment, just what you're taking away, what you're seeing for yourself, what lands, what you're chewing on, what you're going to be taking into your daily life. I'd love to hear that. And I look forward to reading it and engaging with you a little bit further. And if you feel called, by all means, submit your application. And if you're not quite ready for Minted, bank enrollment is always open too.